How's everybody doing? I am doing well. Uh, Today was a pretty decent day. Um, so today, if you weren't here last time, sorry about that. I had to reschedule my stream from yesterday. I had a really bad headache and whatnot, so we're doing it tonight. So, anyways, if you weren't here from Saturday, we started reading this book here, which is Unfamiliar Territory by Lindsay Carter. It was we read the first chapter. We didn't get very far, but it was a really good chapter so far. So I liked it. I did send the video to the author. She watched it. She loved it. She did. She did tell, inform me, I guess is the correct word. But so I was mispronouncing the main character's name. It is pronounced like Cressida. Cressida. I believe that's how she said it's pronounced. Cressida. So anyways, that's my bad. Yeah. So anyways, if you're in the chats or anything, just let me know. You could talk, throughout the reading or whatever. Just a couple things. Don't forget that I am having a promo going on right now. By I think it's like pronounced Streno type or something. They're kind of sponsoring. So they're doing. I put the link on my socials. If you don't have it, let me know. I could get it to you. But they do have we're doing promo right now. The code is Legacy Bookish. But basically, it's 10% off. On the books that they have. They got some apparel. They got stickers, bookish stickers, of course. They have pretty neat stuff. So, check it out. The link is in my socials. If you haven't seen it, go on my Twitter, or I think it's on my Bookstagram and all of that. So, anyways, don't forget to also follow me so you could get notifications when I go on lives. The next couple of lives, I believe, is just doing some reviews. I didn't know if y'all prefer to do like readings like back to back, or if y'all wanted reviews in between there or what. So if you could just let me know what you think. So anyways, so I guess we'll just hop in here and start on this. I think I got the Kindle working okay. It's not at the same as I had before, because I had like a green background. For some reason I don't have a green background anymore. It doesn't give me the option. So we have this color. I thought it was better than black or white. So yeah. So we left off on chapter 2. Let me see. I'm kind of like in full screen on my Kindle. Let's see. Alright, let's go to the next page. Go through. Here we go. Chapter 2. Alright. Oh, you know what? I may have to reposition myself. Hold on. Well, isn't that lovely? I look great. Oh, hold on. Sorry, everybody. I didn't think this through on where to position my stuff. So I wasn't able to read some of the book. Okay, I think we're good now. All right. So let's go back to the book. Also, I can't really see like the chat and stuff. Because I do have the Kindle in full screen. It looked the best on the screen here, so I'll try to check back, periodically. But if I miss your comments or anything, I apologize. So we're also, if you could just let me know if you can see the words okay, because I can make it bigger and whatnot. So, all right. So let's get into the readings here. I'm going to try not to lose my voice. Last time I lost my voice. So, which was fun. So hopefully it will be okay. Okay. Chapter 2. The world I live in is not the same as yours, but rather a sister dimension. Being such, there are many similarities, true, but vast differences as well. One of the biggest differences is the fact that in my world, magic exists, and things that are regarded as myths and legends in the in your realm, are very real here. Werewolves and vampires? They are ordinary nuisances here, and the only reason other dimensions even know of their existence is that on occasion our worlds can connect. For instance, about 100 years ago, a man from your world opened a temporary gateway to mine, and for some reason gifted us with free energy. That man, Tesla, changed our world in a big way. As it is, we still don't have much use for our highly advanced technological capabilities because some of the population is gifted with a variety of magical talents. Some small, some big. These talents can often replace the need for technology. Why invent a fancy icebox when you can use an enchanted entropy-free box to keep your groceries fresh? Or what use is there for heavy farming machinery when people are gifted with plant manipulation? The types of magic are as varied as the people who wield them. Spellcasting, enchanting, elemental magic, mind magic, and innate magic, just to name the common ones. Magic is simply a way of life here, and magic users of all types live side by side with the mundane. It's usually no big deal. But on occasion, magic can be a very big deal. Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, approximately 500 years ago, on the eastern coast of Vinland, there lived a witch of frightening power. She was known as Annie Caudle, and her reputation induced fear in even the bravest of souls. Annie did not use any of her magical ability to benefit anyone else, but rather for her own interests. Now, it is common knowledge in my world that witches with a certain threshold of magical talent have the ability to summon to themselves a being of energy. These beings, once arriving in our plane of existence, create a body for themselves, which always takes the form of a small animal. House cats being the most popular model for some reason. These beings are known as familiars. Annie had powers in spades, and so it took her no time at all to summon her own familiar, a cat spirit by the name of Glivier. Now, familiars are usually emotionally attached to their witches, protecting them from unwanted attention and aiding in their spells. Annie, though, was into cheap labor. Instead of treating Gliver as an equal or protector, the witch swiftly downgraded the familiar status into nothing more than a slave. There is only so much that an ethereal cat can do around the house, even with magical talent, and Annie wanted Gliver to do all the dirty work, quite literally. So, the old witch devised a spell that turned Gliver into a human woman at Annie's will. That way, Gliver was forced to do all the cleaning, cooking, ingredient gathering, and basic spell preparations while Annie focused on her one and only aspiration, world domination. The witch proved to be quite adept at the one thing she set her mind to. Annie Caudle quickly turned her small corner of the country into a hellhole. Magic users began to die of mysterious circumstances, and mundane people lived in fear of enslavement and harsh punishment. Corpses withered. Even the mighty forests began to die as Annie's influence over the natural realm stripped the trees of their organic magic, and her evil influence spread ever wider and at an alarming pace. But there is one little detail that she overlooked. To say that Annie's relationship with her familiar was an unhealthy one would be an understatement. Gliver despised Annie from the moment the witch forced her into a woman's body. While in this state, the familiar was stripped of her powers and vulnerable. To make matters worse, Gliver was hardly ever allowed to revert to her cat form as Annie's kept her constantly busy. This angered Gliver to no end, but Annie, bent on enslaving the planet, was too busy to notice her slave's feelings. Give me a second. Sorry. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. Alright, where were we? I think, okay. One day, as the witch perfected her immortality potion, for what fun was ruling the world if you had to die someday, Gliver made a simple potion of her own. Annie swiftly finished her recipe, unaware of her familiar's going on, and feeling generous, allowed Gliver to change back into a cat. This was the moment Gliver was waiting for. While Annie Caudle ladled her precious potion into a mug and began to sip it ritualistically, Gliver murmured a few words over her own concoction and activated its magical qualities. Then, as Annie tipped the dregs of her potion into her greedy, wide-open mouth, Gliver propelled her potion into the witch's face. The majority coursed down her throat. The results, they say, were fantastic. But I don't know the specifics. What I do know is even though Annie Caudle managed to drink enough of her potion to achieve everlasting life, Gliver actions banished her to another dimension where she could no longer do harm in this world. Before she left, Annie vowed she would find a way back from her banishment and finish the job she started. Gliver was no dummy. She knew Annie meant what she said, so she used a little-known tool that familiars possesses to create a prophecy. By Gliver's blood, the witch is bound. By Gliver's word, the witch must obey. So long as the daughters of Gliver remain, so long as the cat that walks as a woman lives, the witch Annie Caudle can never return. Gliver, sacrificing the last of her power, stole the shape-shifting spell from Annie and internalized it, successfully allowing Gliver to change from cat to human and back again at will. Aside from this new magical ability, Glyver lost all her power. She ceased to be a familiar and became a mortal cat. It was the price to pay for freeing the world of evil Triany. Sorry, guys. Despite the amount of abuse Annie Cottle had heaped upon Glyver, the witch had kept her familiar a fierce guarded secret. Nobody knew of her existence, either as a cat or a human. Glyver could not have waltzed into society as a mortal cat, for no one would have been able to understand that Annie was truly gone. No, Glyver needed to access her human side, which was why the shape-shifting spell was worth her immortality. She wasted a little time in setting out in her human form to spread the word of her successful banishment of Annie Cottle, changing her name to Gilva. She claimed to be the powerless slave of the witch who happened to be lucky enough to learn of a way to dispose of Annie during her imprisonment. Her story spread far and wide, and it wasn't long before the hands of state lauded her as a hero. It also wasn't long before men came out of the woodwork to ask for her hand in marriage, for Gilver's human form was quite lovely to look upon, and her status had skyrocketed. Popularity and beauty made her quite the catch, but love wasn't exactly a factor in any of these proposals. Give me 1 second. Just a little drink break. Alright. Sorry about that, guys. I've been told that the reason why I lost my voice last time because I didn't hydrate enough, but so we'll see. Okay. Gilva, of course, knew that the prophecy required her to bear offspring in order to keep Annie at bay. What she didn't know was that sometimes prophecies take on a life of their own and form some of their own rules. In this particular case, the requirement was that Gilva could only procreate with a man that was her one true love. It didn't happen overnight, but eventually Gilva did indeed find a suitor worthy of the title. She married him and had a very happy 3 months with him before learning the next rule. Since she was a cat first and foremost, it was of the utmost importance that she reverted back to her true form every now and then. This was of course done in secrecy, as her husband did not know of her true state. One day, Gilva told her beloved that she was going to take a stroll through the woods, a pastime she often used as an excuse to get some alone time. Once safely away from any prying eyes, she shifted back into her cat self and spent a wonderful hour hunting and forelicking. When she tried to change back, though, she was unable to. Instinctively, she knew the reason why. She was pregnant. A developing embryo must stay the same species as its mother, and changing forms during growth could cause severe damage to the budding life in the womb once it was past the single cell stage. With this logic, it only made sense that the mother's body would have a built-in mechanism to deny shape-shifting during the entire pregnancy. Gilver, for she still identified with that name as a cat, was a bit saddened by this revelation. She had not properly said goodbye to her husband. She had to settle for approaching him while he worked outside and rubbing up affectionately against his leg. He in turn gently nudged her away and shooed her from his sight, unaware that this would be his last glimpse of his wife. Approximately 9 weeks later, Gliver developed a healthy female kitten. She was once again able to transform into Gilva, but she was no longer felt there was a reason to. Her daughter, upon reaching maturity at 8 months, obtained the ability to shapeshift as well, and thus the lineage of Gliver came to be. Which brings me to, well, me. I, Cressida, sorry, I had to remember how to pronounce it. Cressida Curtin am the last in a very long line of feline shapeshifters. I am the latest descendant of the familiar Gliver, and if the prophecy from 500 years ago is to be believed, I am the only thing standing in the way of Annie's caudal return. No pressure, right? I was born 2 years and almost 6 months ago in a long abandoned barn in the woods, a tiny kitten of pure white, save for 2 small black markings resting between my ears on my forehead. My mother raised me there, catching a variety of rodents and birds for her own sustenance while I was still nursing, and then teaching me the feline art of hunting as I got older. She also taught me about humans and their rules, laws, etiquette, and all other important tidbits. Even though I had never even met a human before, Mom also told me stories of how she could shapeshift into one, and how I would too when I became old enough. I begged her to change into a human for me to see, but she never did. At times, I felt like the whole humanity thing was all a big lie my mother would told me. But when I was around 8 months old, I woke up one day feeling different. I had been maturing from a fuzzy blue-eyed kitten into a sleeker, medium-haired cat with a wonderfully fluffy tail. At that moment, I had crossed an invisible threshold, one that forever bared me the kittenhood and ushered in the primitive maturity of teenagedom. That day, Mom led me to a small clearing in the woods, far away from any prying eyes. She took a deep breath, and her form shimmered before me. I could no longer see her in the indistinguishable glow that lasted just a mere second before the shimmer enlarged and went away. Standing before me was an unusual creature, a human. Despite her vast change in appearance, I knew she was still my mother. Excited to try for myself, I concentrated on changing shape. From my open eyes, I could see the shimmer happening, and then suddenly, I was much taller than I had ever been in my young life. Concentrating again, I managed to transform back into a cat. I practiced all day that day until I had perfected my transformation. Once I had mastered that, it was time for my mom to up my studies, which included learning to speak in the human language common to this region, reading and writing as a human. And throughout my first year of life, there was one lesson upon which my mother placed the most emphasis. I must keep my true nature a secret. No one can know what I truly am. She broke it down into 3 simple and easy to remember rules. 1. Always pretend to be a plain, mundane human. 2. Never shift if any human can see you. 3. If you screw up 1 and 2, never give them the whole story. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I have already broken the first 2 rules with 2 humans, but the third is still intact. And, of course, Grim knows the whole truth, but he's a dog. I asked my mom why I must live in secrecy, and her comment was that while Annie has never returned since her banishment, there may still be some unsavory characters out there who are hell-bent on trying to destroy the prophecy and allow Annie Caudle to return. And there's one other time where I'm allowed to break the rules, if I wish. When I find the one man that is my true love, I could tell him. But I am nowhere near ready for that level of commitment. I'm still young, I have time, and it's best not to dwell on those types of things. After all, I have a business to run. Alrighty. Well, that was chapter 2. Give me 1 second again. Alrighty. So, does anybody have any thoughts on chapter 2 yet? My thoughts. I love the backstory actually. It's very, very good so far. I yeah, I like it. Makes sense and whatnot. So yeah, sorry for all the, you know, pronunciations or whatever. I do think I did a little bit better this time. Anyways, sorry. I'm trying to figure out a good way to like set up my thing. I may change how I do things. How I set up my set stuff or whatever. Oh. Let's see. Alright. So I don't have any other thoughts really. I do think it's good so far, you know, because that stuff we kind of do need, you know, the backstory of our character, who apparently could turn into a cat. So she's a shapeshifter. So cool. All right. So I guess we'll just continue to chapter 3. My voice is still doing good, so Oh, huh. I am so sorry, guys. Apparently, my mic was muted. Sorry about that. As stated before, I'm checking back in on the chats because I can't have my Kindle pulled up at the same time. So sorry about that. Okay, I'll start again. Chapter 3. Good thing we didn't get very far. Okay. It was still dark, of course, as Humbert and the wagon made their way down the mountain road. But with the full moon and my magically sensitive eyes, I could see well enough to be at ease. The dense trees that had enclosed the road for so long finally began to taper off, giving way to shrub and farmland on either side. While Annie Cottle and Gliver had resided in the eastern portion of the country of Vinland, at some point in the last 500 years, my ancestors had traveled west. I was born in the Araucan region, about 100 miles inland from the vast Saronic Ocean. I might have been a bit biased being a native and all, but I surmised this area of the country to be one of the prettiest, especially with the hooded mountains looming close by. I let my tired mind wander as I took in the scenery. We reached Veridel in an hour from where we had approached our quarry. To call Veridel a town was to give it more status than it deserved. There was a simple wooden sign on the outskirts engraved with the words, "Welcome to Veridel. Population? 300. The engraving had once sported bright colors, but most of the paint had peeled off and faded away. Humbert followed the road as it became the main and only drag through the Little Bird. A tiny oval village, green split the lane in two at the very heart of the town. At the widest point sat a handful of businesses, a post office, a police station, and a grocery store on one side, with a restaurant, a general store, a bar, and a church on the other side. I noted with a small amount of amusement that the bar and church were next door neighbors. I wonder if that had been planned. A small number of houses surrounded these buildings before giving way to farms and sheep's fields on either side. The town greenhoused a quaint, tall clock upon an iron post, the most interesting focal point of the entire place. The clock told me the time was 3:29 in the morning. I fervently hoped that someone was working at the police station at this hour. It wouldn't be the first time that I would have to knock on doors to wake people up in these micro towns. That didn't mean I enjoyed doing it. Thankfully, as I rounded the green and slowed Humbert to a stop in front of the police station, I spied a light within. With the strict laws enforcing the use of free energy, I surmise nobody would be stupid enough to waste their allotment by leaving the light on without anybody working there. Humbert fully came to a stop. Blowing a great, horsey sigh from his lips, it had been a long night for him, I thought with a pang of guilt. I got down from my perch and stretched some of the kinks out of the spine once again, leaving Grim and Mr. Collier in the wagon. I pushed open the peeling beige wooden door and entered the station. There was someone working there, but he was fast asleep at the front desk. Given his youth, he must have been a deputy working the graveyard shift. Occasional werewolf aside, I bet there wasn't much need for round-the-clock enforcement in a town so small. I surmised he was only here tonight due to special circumstances. I could hardly fault the man for sleeping on the job, but I was weary myself and wanted to end this business as quickly as possible. A tarnished bell rested on the counter. I struck it smartly, and it let out an alarming clear and loud ding. The young man startled at the sound and nearly tumbled off his chair. He barely glanced around before resting eyes on me. Upon seeing me, he leapt to his feet in a rather uncoordinated way. He ran a hand around his belt to check that his shirt was properly tucked in before fixing his full attention on me. His eyes leapt straight to my hair and stayed glued there for far too long. Ah, yes, the stare. I was well used to it by now. My unusual magical genetics translated my medium-length white feline fur into straight, fine hair of a practically white platinum blonde shade that fell just below the tops of my shoulders. But because my true form had those two black spots marking my forehead, my human counterpart's locks included two jet black streaks that grew just above my temples at the hairline. For someone with such pale hair, the streaks were incredibly noticeable and rather jarring. Most strangers assumed I dyed my hair that way on purpose. And if it wasn't my hair that caught looks, it was my eyes. They retained the vivid sky blue shade of my cat form, a color that was highly unusual in a human. Coupled with the fact that my lashes and eyebrows were a darker shade than my platinum hair, my eyes really stood out. I suppose this, along with a petite 5'3" stature and wiry athletic build, had generally led to me being labeled by humans as cute. It was mostly a distinct downside for my chosen profession, unfortunately. I quite allowed the deputy's visual perusal as his brain slowly warmed back up. Still mentally dusting off the cobwebs and obviously at a loss, he finally mumbled, can I help you, ma'am? I hated the word ma'am. It never failed to make me feel old. I was anything but old, but I ignored it and smiled as sweetly as I could. Albeit with too much teeth showing. I spoke to Sheriff Jones earlier today, and I have a delivery for him. Could you get him for me? The deputy only stared with obvious befuddlement, allowing his mouth to gape and close like a cart without emitting a word. I rolled my eyes in weary expiration, leaning towards the deputy with the toothless smile I could muster. I initiated with a slight growl. Get the sheriff. I paused and added, please. He must have seen the metaphorical blood in my eyes, for the young man jumped up and with a curt, yes ma'am, and ran out the door. I sighed, stretched my arms above my head, and then waited as patiently as I could. I didn't dare sit on the only other chair provided, exhausted as I was. To give the deputy credit, I did not have to wait long. Sheriff Jones, blurry-eyed and scruffy, came in with the younger man at his heels. He was a large man, not fat, but large in body and presence. I made eye contact with the sheriff, who gave me a little nod. Miss Curtin, he boomed. To what do I owe the pleasure this time? I figure after a little talk yesterday, I wouldn't be graced with your presence again. He was referring to the previous afternoon when I showed up to discuss the bounty on Mr. Collar. His little talk consisted of assuring me that the problem would be handled by a professional very soon and not to get involved because, and I quote, I would hate to see that pretty face of yours get mangled. My response to the clear misogyny was to ask the man if the bounty was still open, and if so, to make sure it would be rewarded with all fairness once it was claimed. He did verify this to be true. I left without punching him in the face to take a nap before I drove out to the last known whereabouts of the werewolf. A very professional approach, if I do say so myself. Now, from the vest pocket, I pulled out the crinkled sheet of paper with Mr. Collier's mugshot on it. I unfolded it before showing it to Jones. I have your men. Sorry. Sorry, guys. I have your man, Sheriff. I've come to collect. The sheriff blinked at the dozzer before looking at me. You have him? Give me 1 second. We're going to do a quick water break. Let me know if the music is still playing. I don't mind it. I just don't want the music to be super loud. It could play and stuff. So just let me know. Alright. We will continue on to chapter 3 with the rest of chapter 3. Alright. We're on the next page. I suppressed my urge to strangle the man. Sheriff, I was trying to tell you this afternoon that despite my ginger, age, and my looks, and despite still being a bit fresh to my chosen occupation, I am a professional. Meaning, your job has been handled just as you had hoped. The big man rubbed the back of his neck. Now, miss, no need to take offense. If what you say is true, then I'll admit I was wrong. That's awfully big of you, sir. But, he held up a hand to ban me from interrupting. Seeing is believing. Let's have a peek at the man, shall we? I nodded, annoyed that my word wasn't enough, but pleased that I was about to make him metaphorically eat his hat. Sometimes I had to celebrate the little wins. I folded up the wanted poster and placed it in my pocket. Sheriff Jones motioned for his deputy, who had been standing uselessly to the side. Bloom, you come too. We might need an extra set of hands. Deputy Bloom jumped at his name, but dutifully followed us outside to my wagon. A canine huff emitted from within, followed by a low growl. The noise was just loud enough, with enough of a threat behind it, that both men stopped well away from my wagon. I rolled my eyes again. It's just my partner, I explained, marching up to the wagon with no fear. As I unlocked the back door, I said, "Cool it," to Grim. The interior of the wagon quieted immediately. I opened the doors and allowed some space for Grim to jump out. He soundlessly and obediently trotted to me and sat by my side. Your partner? Deputy Bloom mimicked my words with disbelief in his words. He hadn't been around in the afternoon like the sheriff had, and therefore hadn't met Grim yet. This was a reaction that we encountered on a regular basis. Grim and I, for starters, lichen Huns, are not easy to ignore. Despite belonging to the hound group, lichen hounds more resemble border collies, with a slightly squarish long muzzle, 3/4 pricked ears, shaggy fur, and intelligent yellow eyes, except they were all black. Slightly leggier and much, much bigger than a collie. Grim was 3 feet tall, just at his shoulders. He had also perfected his "don't mess with me" demeanor, and smart people tended to keep their distance. And to be partnered with me, a petite young woman, well, the visual juxtaposition seemed to blow people's minds. So, I just nodded as the deputies incredulously questioned, shrugged my shoulders and nonchalantly, and then ignored him. It was my go-to response. I gestured to the sheriff to check out my catch. Sheriff Jones gave Grim a nervous look but strode over to peer into the wagon's interior. Mr. Collier had barely moved from his hunched position in the far corner of the wagon. He turned his head to meet the sheriff's gaze. Hello, Gordon, he stammered. Sheriff Jones sighed at the greeting. He seemed to deflate a little at the sight within the wagon. Ed, he responded, although more to himself. Straightening, the sheriff turned to me, nodded his head, then called out, Bloom, grab the man out of there and bring him into the station. Deputy Bloom didn't move. He only blinked once, glanced at me, then settled his full attention on Grim before peering at the wagon with a look of dread on his face. Grim seemed to sense his trepidation and let out a soft growl, adding fuel to the profitable fear fire. Bloom turned white. Sir? He stammered. It's safe, Bloom. Get a move on, Jones ordered. The younger man finally listened to his boss and moved. Albeit reluctantly, he cast another look in my direction. I couldn't discern what made him more nervous, Grim or the has-been werewolf. My partner won't hurt you, and the werewolf is harmless at the moment. He can't murph with the shackles on, I informed him. With that information, Bloom moved with a bit more confidence. While he crawled into the back of the wagon, I noticed the town had started to come awake at the commotion. Sleepy, disheveled citizens formed a ring around us. Sheriff Jones beckoned to a boy of around 12 years of age over to his side. Andy, go fetch Amelia, he told the boy in a low tone. Tell her we need the potion. The boy nodded, wide-eyed, and cast a glance at the wagon before sprinting off. Jones turned back to the wagon. My boy, he informed me without a glance in my direction. I made a small noise in my throat as a means of acknowledgement. Bloom finally managed to guide the shackled Collier out of the back of the wagon, having reapplied the blanket around the naked man's waist. The gathering crowd murmured amongst themselves. Grim by my side growled deeply, drawing attention back to himself. The crowd of looky-loos took a fearful step back in unison, as if choreographed. I bit the insides of my cheeks to prevent myself from smiling and placed my hand on top of Grim's head to silently tell him to shut up. He stopped instantly. The deputy led Mr. Collier into the station with the sheriff directly behind. Graham and I brought up the rear. I was pleased to see that no one was inside. Graham sometimes came in handy for keeping unwanted crowds at bay. In the light of the station, Mr. Collier was white and ashen, his face gaunt and his body streaked with dirt. His eyes became shiny with unshed tears as he turned towards Jones. Gordon? He began to whimper. Sheriff Jones raised his hands, his face hard. Mr. Collier ceased talking, but still let out faint snivels. Ed, you have the right to remain silent. Your judgment will come enough, but save your pleas. Amelia will be here soon too. Jones' speech was interrupted by a loud knock on the door. Jones nodded curtly at the deputy, who sprang into action and almost ran to open the door. An older woman with steel gray hair and a loose braid over one shoulder entered. She was still wearing her nightgown, with a dingy cream-colored robe wrapped around her. She held a small vial in her hand. "Good morning, Sheriff," she greeted, her tone somber. "Amelia," Jones responded with a trace of warmth. "I see you have it." She held up the vial and carefully swirled the murky contents within. "Wolfbane's," she announced. "I made it just last evening, in hopes of such an occasion." "Wonderful, Amelia. Might I introduce you to Miss Curtin? She is the one that tracked and captured Ed." He turned to me. "Amelia is our resident herb woman." Herb woman, or sometimes just a herbalist, is just another name for a lesser witch. Someone who has the knowledge and skill to make minor potions out of plants, but no talent for any other magic. For some odd reason I never understood, many of these small or tight-knit communities saw witches of any caliber in a negative light, despite any benign intentions that most witches might have. Therefore, this more polite term was conceived to use for a respected member of these communities, which did away with the so-called negative connotation of being dubbed a witch. Another break. Alright, let us continue. I thought it was stuff and nonsense, personally. The names were interchangeably in my mind, as long as one wasn't a power-grubbing, familiar, enslaving harridan. I did not see how being called a witch was insulting. This woman had a look about her that suggested she would be the type to take offense to being called a witch. However, so I kept my opinions to myself. It was just as well, because Amelia clearly didn't warm up to me on sight alone. She looked me over upon Joan's introduction, pursing her lips and narrowing her eyes slightly. Her body language screamed that she did not trust my presence. "My pleasure," she said, although there was no pleasure in her tone. I refused to give the satisfaction of cowing me. I have a curt head nod and replied, "Ma'am." She then turned her attention to Graham by my side. Her stiff and unwelcoming demeanor lifted slightly. "A Lakeland hound," she murmured appreciatively. She took another glance at me, appraising me anew. "It takes a strong will and determined hand to own such a dog." "Oh, I don't own him," I replied with an offhand shrug. "We just work together." The herb woman made a small grunt in return. Scolding at my flippancy, she turned away from me to focus on the task at hand, clearly dismissing my presence. False necessities met. Amelia asked the sheriff if she could administer the potion now, to which Jones gave his permission. I took this opportunity to wrap up my business and, politely grabbing Jones' arm, steered him a small distance from the proceedings. "My end is done, Sheriff," I stated, keeping my tone professional. "It's been a long night, and I like to be on my own." "Oh, yes, of course. What is it that I owe you? 500? I sighed and did my best to prevent rolling my eyes. Lowballing bounty hunters was the oldest trick in the book. I once again removed the folded piece of paper. Opening it and smoothing the creases, I displayed it to the sheriff, pointing out the sum at the bottom. 900, not a penny less. He knew better than to argue. "Of course, wait here." He retreated to a back room. While I waited, I watched the herb woman as she tipped her wolfbane potion down Mr. Collier's throat. I was no stranger to witnessing the effects of wolfbane, since my partner was bred to hunt werewolves, and it happened to be our specialty. This was the 4th time I had viewed this as administration. Unfortunately, it was not the most pleasant thing to observe, and Mr. Collier's case was no different. Within seconds of swallowing the liquid, he doubled over, groaning. The veins at the surface of his skin turned a deep violet as the herb destroyed the werewolf taint within his blood. He fell to the floor, gasping and withering in sudden agony. Sheriff Jones returned with a cloth bag just as Mr. Collier's blood vessels faded back to normal color, indicating that the lycanthropy was fully destroyed. While Collier lay on the floor, panting with exhaustion, I counted my money and double-checked that the receipt was also tucked into the bag. Satisfied, I turned to Jones, who was looking rather green. I doubted he had ever seen the wolfbane at work. I cleared my throat to get his attention. Sticking out my hand to shake, I said, "A pleasure doing business with you, Sheriff. Good luck with him." I tilted my head at Collier. Jones, still riveted on the goings-on, didn't seem to notice my comment, but robotically shook my proffered hand, still clearly shell-shocked. I turned to go, frustrated by my treatment during this whole affair. Between the blatant discrimination based on my appearance, the attempt to shortchange me, and now a limp-handed dismissal, I was leaving the situation in a sour mood. Honestly, it wasn't the first time I had been treated this way. It shouldn't have surprised me. "Oh, Miss Curtin." I turned around at the sheriff's call, putting my dark thoughts on temporary hold. My feelings must have been etched upon my face. However, because the man took a slight step back upon meeting my eyes, he rubbed his sweaty forehead with the back of his hand, finally giving me his full attention. "My apologies, miss," he said sheepishly. He gave a half chuckle of discomfiture. "I'll be the first to say I didn't think you had it in you. This is a bad affair for this town. There aren't that many of us here, and I didn't need any more embarrassment to reflect badly on this community. Ed here is my cousin, and I didn't want to draw attention to his mistake than was needed. I worried a lady like yourself might only aggravate the problem at my hand by getting yourself injured." I stood stock still, doing my best to rein in my emotions and keep my face neutral. "Okay. What I'm trying to say, and failing because it's late and I'm wrung out, is that you did a better job than I imagined even a seasoned hunter would do. Thank you for that. Veridell owes you a debt beyond what I just paid you. I want you to know that you are always welcome here. You and your dog, that is. I'll be happy to recommend you to anyone with a similar problem too. And, God forbid, if something like this ever happens again, you will be the first person I contact to take the job." A large chunk of apprehension I had been holding evaporated at the second half of his speech. I allowed myself a small smile. "Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate it. If you ever do need help, I will be honored to work with you again. Have a good night." He tipped his head at me as I turned away. Before leaving the station, I approached the hapless caller, who was still recumbent and groaning softly. I carefully unlocked my silver shackles from his neck and wrists, once again attaching them to my belt, giving him a quick head nod when he locked eyes with me briefly. I stood. "Keep the blanket," I told the room in general. Partner at my heels, I left without a second glance at the proceedings behind me. Okay. Give me 1 second. Alrighty, so that's the end of chapter 4. And I am probably going to stop right there because now I'm starting to lose my voice again. But I did better. Last time I only got through 1 chapter, so anyways, if you have any thoughts on chapter 4, let me know. Obviously, it's still early. The story's still building. So yeah. So far, I think it's going pretty good. There was a couple moments I wanted to kind of laugh because I thought it was kind of funny, but yeah. So I like it. Yeah. I don't know if I'm doing too good on the voices. I'm trying to make the voices so that like at least we could distinguish who's talking and stuff. So yeah. Let's see. Do I have any? I don't really have any thoughts yet. Still, obviously, like I said, it's still early. Still a lot of building the story, backstory stuff. Yeah. Well, at least she was able to do the job that nobody else was able to. That's pretty cool. So, alright. Well, this is kind of like the conclusion of my stream today. Like I said, the next couple streams this week is going to be reviews. We'll continue the story probably next week. And we'll start. I made it to 2 chapters, so we'll do like 5 and 6. So, the author did give me permission to read the whole book on Twitch, but only part of it's going to be posted on like other sites. So, just keep that in mind. Don't forget about the promo code Bookish Legacy for the link that is on my socials. Just check it out. I think I have it. The link you can get to from my homepage too. It's under social links. So don't forget about that. Don't forget to follow me on my other places so you could stay updated. So I hope to see you. I think, when is the next one? Let me look real quick. Okay, so it looks like tomorrow is the next stream. It's at 9 o'clock. And it's a review. It's the review for The Cruel Prince, which is a pretty popular book. So I'm excited to talk about that. So yeah. Well, I guess I'll see you tomorrow. Right here. Alright. Bye.